who's actually going to get the most out of a 30-inch dual-zone beverage fridge? Is it a must-have for a home bar enthusiast, or just another appliance that eats cabinet space for the sake of a fancy temperature dial? And for the average family that wants a few bottles of wine chilled without breaking the bank, does the price make sense? If you're wrestling with those questions, you're not alone. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at under-counter wine coolers, the biggest hesitation I felt was the classic fight-or-fail dilemma. A 30-inch unit sounds perfect on paper, but many kitchens have odd-shaped cabinets, limited clearance, or just the wrong venting setup. The Velivi model promises both built-in and freestanding flexibility, which immediately caught my eye because I could test the fit before committing to a permanent install. That flexibility is the first real safeguard against the dreaded buyer's remorse of a fridge that simply won't slide into the space you've cleared. The dual-zone feature is the headline claim. One side holds wine at cellar-like temperatures, 4164 F, while the other keeps beers or soft drinks colder. In practice, that means you can store a case of craft brews at 35 F and a few bottles of Pinot Noir at 55 F side by side without the temperatures bleeding into each other. I've seen people try to cheat this with a single-zone fridge and end up with overchilled reds or lukewarm lagers. The separate thermostats on the Velivi take the guesswork out of that balancing act, and the smart touch control makes swapping the temperature settings as easy as scrolling a phone screen. If you're the type who entertains a small crowd on weekends, the real win here is the LED interior lighting and the low noise compressor. The lighting is bright enough to see every bottle label without opening the door, which is a subtle convenience when you're pulling a specific vintage during a dinner party. The low noise claim isn't just marketing fluff. The unit runs at a level you can barely hear over a conversation, so it doesn't become a background distraction in an open-plan kitchen or a home office. Now, let's talk about who should actually consider this fridge. If you have a dedicated wine collection, say, a dozen bottles you rotate seasonally, and you also like to keep a few craft beers on hand for casual evenings, the dual-zone layout is a genuine time saver. It eliminates the need for a separate wine rack and a mini fridge, freeing up both floor space and cabinet real estate. For small-scale home bars, especially those with limited countertop room, the ability to tuck the unit under a counter while still looking sleek makes it a strong contender. On the flip side, if your drinking habits are limited to a single type of beverage, like you only ever keep soda in the fridge, or you're a wine-only purist who stores bottles in a traditional cellar, the extra zone might feel like paying for a feature you'll never use. Likewise, renters who can't make permanent modifications to cabinetry might find the installation process more hassle than it's worth, despite the freestanding option. The fridge still needs a stable, level surface and sufficient clearance for the rear ventilation, which can be a tricky fit in cramped studio apartments. Practical strengths start showing up when you think about daily use. The temperature memory function remembers your last setting after a power outage, so you don't have to recalibrate each zone every time the lights flicker. That's handy for anyone who lives in an older building where power isn't always steady. The safety lock is another understated benefit. It prevents curious kids or pets from opening the door and potentially spilling or damaging bottles, a small detail that becomes a big relief if you have a busy household. However, there are a couple of trade-offs worth noting. The interior shelves are fixed, so you can't reconfigure them for unusually shaped bottles or large party packs. If you occasionally bring home a 2-liter soda bottle, you'll have to store it on the top shelf, which can be a squeeze. Also, while the unit advertises low noise, the compressor does cycle on and off more frequently than a full-size refrigerator, especially if you keep the doors open for a while selecting drinks. That can cause a slight temperature fluctuation if you're very particular about precise wine storage, though most casual drinkers won't notice. Another practical consideration is energy consumption. A 30-inch dual-zone fridge will draw more power than a single-zone mini-fridge, simply because it's maintaining two separate temperatures. In a household that's already juggling multiple hydro appliances, you'll see a modest uptick on the electric bill. It's not a massive spike, but if you're budgeting tightly, that's a factor to weigh against the convenience of having both wine and beer chilled in one footprint. So, How does the price stack up against the value you actually get? Compared with buying two separate appliances, a wine cooler and a small beverage fridge, you're likely saving a few $100s, plus you avoid the visual clutter of two units. The